Good morning and welcome to the final presentation for BMA 799 Strategic Management. My name's Chris Young and I'm going to take you through some issues for Google as they currently stand in 2016, their strategic priorities and some future strategy for them as they move forward. So who are Google? What do they do and why do they do it? Over the last few weeks, I've certainly found that Google are more than just an internet search engine provider. They don't fit within a particular industry classification or category. They span numerous categories, numerous geographical areas, and basically operate in nearly every country on the planet. Ranging from their go-to platform being their web search, through to advertising, their mobile apps through Android, mobile music, streaming and YouTube, and a particular focus on R&D in information technology. Google are and have been a star performer since 1996. Google's main competitors are Apple, Microsoft and Yahoo across most of those industry and business areas previously mentioned. Google aren't shy from partnering where they see some capabilities and returns in doing so, and their major partners have been Samsung, Motorola, and also being part of the Open Handset Alliance relating to the creation and running of Android. But Google are more than just Google now. They've now taken on the meaning of alphabet. Google have recently undergone a significant restructure. This occurred in mid-2015, early 2016. Google having a history of doing things differently. They break the mold when it comes to how companies structure themselves and how they should act in the eyes of the general business community. Google operated with a corporate structure and strategy that meant it was really one big melting pot of products, services, resources and projects. It didn't have a hierarchy or structure. Google was Google, everyone was part of it, which made it difficult for those on the outside looking in, wanting to invest or being asked to invest in a business which was hard to dissect what were the performing aspects of the company, what aspects weren't performing well, and where they could get a feel from where Google was moving in the future. Added to this stakeholder disquiet, there is a move by Google to re-enter the Chinese market, which it exited some years ago. But also, Google have a number of other challenges in moving forward, being allegations of abuse of its market power position and the reality in the eyes of the co-founders of Google that it was just getting too big and it required a change in structure and strategy so that particular focus could be given and responsibility given to particular areas of the business. Therefore, Google became Alphabet, or did it? The current structure of Google/Alphabet can be seen on this diagram. So traditionally Google was one big sole trading entity. Now Alphabet has been created to become a parent company or a parent entity. The idea being that each of the business level issues such as Google, GoogleX, Google Capital and Nest report directly to Alphabet. So each of these sub businesses have their own manager or leader who then reports to Alphabet. In particular, Google is still the biggest of these entities, including its bread and butter main source of income being its search platform, its Android platforms, YouTube, its apps, maps and advertisements. So when we say Alphabet, the market and those in the know still really refer to Google. So Google's strategy: diversification, diversification, diversification. It operates in every country, multiple market sectors, and it's spread across many IT areas, so that its strategy has worked to date. However, only one source of income, 97% of its revenue comes from advertising. So is Google truly diversified? That has led to criticisms of the Google structure and over-reliance on the advertising income, and that has led to some specific strategic issues moving forward for Google, such as the company restructure, the Chinese re-entry, and doing battle with its arch nemesis, Apple. The first of these strategic issues relates to China. Google exited China in 2010 after allegations of hacking of Google's platforms by Chinese-sponsored hackers, Chinese government-sponsored hackers, I should say, that Google was required to change its values to stay in the Chinese market, as Google proudly founded themselves on the basis of free and open access. So they weren't prepared to self-censor. So Google exited the market in 2010, but now are seeking to try and get back in. Barriers to that re-entry include political, social and legal, in that there are still significant political issues with China and freedom of speech, social issues as to the impact of Google potentially winding back on its values, and also legal requirements, making sure that Google are able to partner or ally themselves with in-country local manufacturers and suppliers. Threats? Well, one of Google's values is that democracy on the web works. It might have to scale that back if it wants to re-enter a market such as China. So, what strategy can they use? I'd suggest a softly approach. Media reports suggest that Google, rather than going in 100% back into the market with its full array of platforms and services, are going to start with a softly approach by using their Google Play app as a basis of re-entry into the market. Rather than using their full search capability, allow Google to re-enter the market by having the apps and apps alone, which means that they can be controlled, the content can be controlled, and it may placate the government in China in relation to Google's re-entry. So they can do that by alliance and partnerships with other local businesses, and looking to reinvigorate its partnerships with its partners such as Samsung and Motorola in these markets using its Android platform. The other option for Google is a difficult one. They might just say no. Let's wait and see. The second strategic issue to be addressed by Google is its closest competitor, that being Apple. On the one hand, Apple make hardware, software, are excellent at branding, promotion and resource and development, but they're a closed shop. They don't allow others to use its iOS program. They are very much a loner in the industry when it comes to partnering and using their technology. Google's focus, however, is on product development, mobility, R&D, and they are an open shop. They like to use partnerships and market forces, including spreading their Android program far and wide and allowing access to that to gain greater market share. But moving forward, Google need to catch up to Apple when it comes to entry into China. Apple are a player in China Apple did not take the same philosophy as Google did in 2010 and have made a significant inroad into that market. Apple need to counter Google's growing grip on mobile-based platforms such as its Android system, but both have issues in that it must contend with wireless providers and access to networks, because as we move forward and the growing number of people becoming more mobile, people relying on tablets and tablet PCs, the networks are going to become even busier, and there needs to be some negotiation between the Googles and the Apples of the world with these providers to maintain access to that at a reasonable cost. And lastly, and again but not leastly, Google need to start looking at their options of income and revenue other than their ad. So, how are Google placed in 2015-16? The advantages are that they have a strong market position. Mobile, smartphone and tablet growth is expected to continue in the coming years, and they have a significant market share in that area, given their popular and functional Android operating system. They have an ever-increasing focus on resource and development, and it's hoped that the recent restructure will allow those offshoot projects to continue and let Google shoot for the moon, as they like to refer to when it comes to product and software development. The negatives currently facing Google, again, over-reliance on advertising and income. They have some risks in re-entry into China, and current litigation on allegations of copyright breach and data privacy concerns continue to follow Google, and that can be a costly, time-consuming and image damaging process that Google needs to contend with quickly. Alright, so that was Google as it currently stands. So I'd now like to address 4 questions that can cover a number of areas and scenarios faced by Google. The first being Google's vision and mission and its values. So Google itself was co-founded by 2 Stanford University students back in 1996. Their vision at that time was to create the most intuitive search engine in the world. They would freely admit now that they're not there yet, but they're getting there. Google's vision is driven by its mission, in that Google's mission is to organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Therefore, they look to have open ways of doing business. Their company and their reason for being is to provide information to everybody, so that anybody on the planet can freely access that information at short notice. Their values that they have tried to stick by are outlined under a heading called 10 Things We Know to Be True on their main website. One of those 10 values is focus on the user, and all else will follow. They are looking to focus on the end consumer, on what they want, what they need, what's the value proposition to them, what's valuable to them, and why do they want to do it. Other values, written and non-written, are things such as be seen to be doing no evil, to be open, access, and to have freedom. That may be a challenge moving forward into the re-entry into the Chinese market, because re-entry may come at some costs of freedom and access. Google may have to compromise on those values, and in doing so, will any compromise affect the value proposition in the eyes of consumers? Will they lose any branding or moral high ground in doing so? and how Google manages this is going to be significant for test for them moving forward. The second question relates to Google and how it identifies its strengths and weaknesses. So Google would want to identify strengths and weaknesses so that it can understand who they are and what they want to do. By understanding who they are, what they want to do, why and where, it helps Google lay the foundation for a strategy to then further explore their risks, their opportunities and the threats facing them as a company. By Google being able to appreciate and analyse its corporate business and functional levels of its strategy, Google can then move through analysis of the external and industry environment it operates in. The external environment includes factors commonly referred to as political, economic, legal, demographic, social, cultural, but also the issues, so that it can get a feel of where it's placed in that area. Google can also look internally. It can look at its resources and capabilities. It can look at what it does well, what the gaps are, what it needs to improve on. Next, they can conduct a competitor analysis of their rivals and whether or not there are ways and means of exploiting any strategic capabilities over and above what they've already identified. And lastly, Google can look at identifying its gaps that may exist between the business strategy and the other functions that we've just referred to. So what we mean by that is that having gone through this process, don't just sit on your work to date. Go back, review what you've done, identify the steps that Google might take to increase those strategic capabilities and fill the gaps between strategy and, say, for example, the internal environment. What internal matters need to be addressed. Talking about business strategy, what is Google's business level strategy? Well, Hubbard in his text at page 21 refers to a business level strategy as how a particular organisation positions itself relative to competitors to create a sustainable competitive advantage. So, recent changes to Google in identifying business units in particular. Google now has its functional areas, things such as YouTube and Google Search. So to help identify Google's strategy, it can adopt an analysis of the 5 Qs, which I won't go to here now, but questions such as, for example, what amount of growth and level of profitability does the organisation want to have, and then four other questions there. Really, Google need to look at the value for its clients and the value for stakeholders. What value can it create? What value can it improve on to make sure that Google continue to be a significant market player? Google's strategy at the end of the day is a generic strategy of differentiation. They're looking to stretch the market and its competitors. They're looking to use its capabilities to provide an overwhelming sense of value to customers, value to its stakeholders, so that there is an even lesser risk of customers looking for and using substitutes over and above products and services offered by Google. So, why is it important that Google identify its internal strengths and weaknesses? Well, strengths can be looked at in the terms of capabilities. That are capabilities that are superior to its competitors. Identification of these strengths and these capabilities through processes such as the VRIO or resource-based view, looking at capabilities that are valuable, rare, can they be imitated? Does the organisation have the structure in place to maximise and create that value? They need to do this so that they can strategically look at their future, where they need to allocate resources, where the best return can be derived from, and also what are their gaps. Identifying strengths and weaknesses also allow you to look at countering moves of competitors. But most importantly, it assists in future strategic planning over the next say 3 to 5 years. Can assist in answering questions as to whether or not they stay in a particular market or withdraw, whether they enter a new market or a market they haven't been in for a while, but also looking at whether they have the capabilities to take on certain projects and competitors. And that concludes my presentation for BMA 799 Strategic Management. Google 2015-2016 seem to have undergone some significant changes. They've got some significant challenges moving forward, but it appears that they are doing everything they can to position themselves in new markets, position themselves against their competitors to leverage their strategic capabilities, which at the end of the day are their superior Google search platform, their Android devices, and their ability to earn income from their advertising, but at the same time they need to expand their income and revenue base. Thank you for listening.